Hello and welcome to our fourth and final short talk based on the book of Philippians, Paul's letter to the Philippian church. If you've not read chapter 4, maybe take a minute now. It only will take a minute or so to read chapter 4 for yourself and then come back and watch the rest of the video. Thanks. Okay. The verse and chapter divisions in the Bible are obviously much later than the original text, and Paul's letter wouldn't have had those divisions. So he's continuing really in chapter 4 where he left off at the end of chapter 3. He's talking about citizens of heaven eagerly awaiting the return of Jesus. And just as Philippi was a colony of Rome, so the church is pictured as a colony of heaven. To quote Alistair McGrath, the church is a colony of heaven whose people look forward to the day when they can return to their homeland. In verse 2, Paul pauses to settle a dispute between Euodia and Syntyche, two prominent women who were co-workers with him in Philippi. He doesn't take sides, he just pleads with them to sort it out, to agree with each other in the Lord. And I think this pause is actually a practical outworking of being citizens of heaven. He knows that this unity damages the cause of the gospel. It's a bad witness and it's a tremendous drainer of energy and time. Paul has more important things to worry about, and he thinks the church should too. In verse 2, Paul twice encourages the church to rejoice. How are you doing with that at the moment? The dictionary says that to rejoice is to feel joy or gladness or to delight in something. Maybe you're finding it hard to do that at the moment. But Paul says, rejoice in something, rejoice in the Lord. Not to find our joy in our circumstances, which can change, but in the unchanging, unfailing King of the universe. In verse 6, he says, don't be anxious about anything. And this got me thinking a bit, and you might need to bear with me on this one. The Bible talks about two kinds of blindness. You can be medically blind and spiritually blind. It talks about two kinds of deafness. You can be medically deaf and spiritually deaf. And that got me thinking, maybe there are two kinds of anxiety: medical anxiety and spiritual anxiety. Medical anxiety is where our body's natural reactions to stress affect us negatively. They can be controlled medically, perhaps with medication that changes our brain chemistry, or by something like cognitive behavioral therapy, which gets us to identify and change patterns of thinking. So maybe spiritual anxiety has a different cure. Spiritual anxiety is where we fail to allow the Lord to rule and reign in every aspect of our lives. I can remember as a young child, my granddad coming to visit in his car, and in a very, very quiet village street, he put me on his knee and he let me drive the car. Now, I wasn't really driving the car. I had my hands on the steering wheel, but he was in complete control. He controlled the pedals, he controlled the direction really. If I'd have suddenly swerved off, he'd have pulled me back in the right direction. Spiritual anxiety, I think, is where we've put our hands on the wheel, but we've forgotten that actually God's fully in control. And then we get burdened by a responsibility that's not ours to carry. Paul says that spiritual anxiety is best treated through prayer, through honestly coming to the Lord and giving our problems into his safe hands to deal with, rather than letting them dominate our hearts and minds. And as we do that, we'll know supernatural peace, enabling us to trust that God is in control, not us. Paul's encouraging the believers to bring everything to God in prayer. It's been good to be part of the telephone prayer sessions on Sunday afternoons. And the reality is that we've been getting at least twice as many people taking part in those sessions as we would normally expect to find at a physical prayer meeting. let's not lose our desire to pray when the immediate crisis is over, or if the situation continues. We need to keep pushing into God in prayer. Verse 8 seems to become more relevant with each passing year as technology develops and our choices multiply, and there's so many voices trying to attract and catch our attention. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. How does my daily diet of TV, social media, radio, books, music, how does all that score on Paul's rating system? Paul then brings the letter to close by referring to the practical help he's been receiving from the Philippian church. Again, he sees it through the lens of being a citizen of heaven. Practical care is a fragrant offering to the Lord. Living generously, demonstrating love and care, rejoicing in the Lord, praying, reconciling differences, is all worship. George Herbert wrote the hymn "Teach Me, My God and King" almost 400 years ago, and I updated the lyrics a little for my hymn project, you may have heard, but the verses share the same sentiment that Paul's referring to. I just want to read it to you. Teach me, my God and King, in all things to see you, in everything I do today, to do it as for you. A servant with this choice makes drudgery divine. The smallest thing done for your praise transforms into something fine. Open my eyes to see your gracious hand at play, that I may look beyond this earth, see heaven at work today. This is my joyous hope, a wonder to behold, that when I give you all I have, you turn my dust to gold. Thanks very much for watching. Let's see what we can do in bringing a life of worship into our daily life, in every part of life this week. We're going to do a new series on the fruit of the Spirit in the next few weeks, and we've got a new up-and-coming speaker by the name of Rod Fairbrother, who's going to start off that series next week. Looking forward to that. Let me just close with the final verse of this letter, but from the Message translation. May you receive and experience the amazing grace of the Master, Jesus Christ, deep, deep within yourselves. Amen. Thanks for watching.